Another thing I always think about is this wonderful, moving, sad anecdote that he would tell when lecturing on Toni Morrison. True story from his own youth. He, as John said, he grew up in Sandusky, Ohio, but they made a road trip in the 60s before civil rights down to the South. And they made a stop at a gas station. His dad asked where the restrooms are. And the gas station attendant said, well, for you, it's round the back. And Ken expected his dad, who was this big, imposing figure, to tell the guy to get lost. But instead he said, yes, sir, yes, sir. And this was a vision of racism, obviously, and also a vision of just just how much it's possible for society to deprive people of autonomy. And exactly the thing that Ken wanted at all costs to avoid.
Right. I mean, really, if you think of liberal arts as commitment to freedom, which is where the word liberal comes from originally, he was really committed to education as a means for freedom, for people figuring out, students, colleagues, listeners, figuring out, who am I, which he always thought was one of the most fundamental questions. What do I care about? What should I do? And then if I were going to give a Kantian twist to his views, which he was not a Kantian, what can I hope for?
He said the same thing about parenting. It's not about making a mini version of you. It's about helping that child to figure out who they want to be.
Ken experienced some racism, as you have described, Josh, but he was also very aware of his father's life, which was very full of racism before he moved to the North, and then even after that. Ken was an African American, but for the record, it was something that he was very aware of, spoke from personal experience. We had lots of conversations, not on Philosophy Talk, but elsewhere, about Gone with the Wind, and he convinced me I didn't really like the book and movie the way I thought I had. But in university politics, in department politics, this did not dominate his thinking. I mean, he was sensitive to all forms of injustice, and if needed, he could give personal recollections of experiences of racism. But he wasn't. His research was not dominated by issues of race and so forth. He was into the philosophy of language and very deep metaphysical issues. So it was an interesting combination of not being insensitive but not being obsessed that I think made a great contribution to the department and to the university.
I completely agree. And I think it's, for African American faculty are often under a lot of pressure to write and think about topics pertaining to race. And Ken was clearly an anti-racist, but he was a broad thinker, interested, as we have been saying, in everything. And, ultimately a humanist, not somebody who thought about, more limited identities. He was always for thinking about things from different points of view and taking on different identities. And he was incredibly courageous because he was also under pressure from people to conform. You've got to work on these subjects. You've got to be a role model by working on these subjects.
I can remember arguing about certain admissions cases and say, for crying out loud, Ken, you're black and you don't want to give this kid a little bit of edge? Because I was a bit of a softie. And he would say, no, I don't.
Fascinating. I mean, he once said about his way of thinking about his own race that it was an element in the stew of his character. Not the beef, not just the paprika, somewhere in between.
Is it? Oh, that's great.
Right?
That's great. And
so it mattered to him. Of course it mattered to him. And broader race issues mattered to him. But other things mattered to him too.